Ladies and gents, this is Alan Rance, and we met, funnily enough, online, as obviously everyone meets these days, about nearly a year ago, something like that. And what struck me was really interesting was it was even before we'd come up with what we were doing around the full sort of structure of Fusion Net Zero, was Alan did something which I think is extraordinary, and really the reason we wanted him here today. He is a business person, okay? He's not a loser journalist like me. He's not an energy bod. He's not someone that works for the government. He is someone who runs a business. And he decided one day that he was going to change his business to a net zero business. And you're probably sitting there thinking, you're watching at home, how the hell do you do that? Most of us, 2030, 2050, 2099. He did it in, 18 months or just a bit over? And I think his story is fascinating. So, Alan, can you take us back to, just give them an idea of what your company does, what sort of person you were, and what triggered you on your 18-month Masonic journey to divine net zero land?
Well, the first thing I'll say, there's nothing like an introduction where you can only fail, is there? So the situation is, I'm a foundry pattern maker by trade. I started my business, Midas Pattern Company, 32 years ago. And for something like 27, 28 of those years, I've been making plastic mouldings. So that's a really bizarre thing to confess in front of an audience, because there's obviously things that are far worse than that, but there's plenty of things that are better. A couple of years ago, April the 18th, 2019, I was sitting in my nice lounge with a garage full of nice cars and a carbon footprint as big as an elephant's, that's for sure. And I watched Climate Change: The Facts. I'm sure everybody's seen it. BBC production, Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough. And in the space of 60 minutes, my life changed forever. And that's an easy thing to say, and most probably people would take that with a pinch of salt. But it really did. It really did, and I'll tell you why. Because it made me reflect. It made me not just reflect on my carbon-intensive past, but it made me think really deeply about the responsibility I had and the part I'd played in my carbon footprint over all those years. And I just thought about it and just thought, look, on the face of it, I'm a successful guy. I'm doing okay. So surely if I'm in that position, I've got a better chance than a lot of people of making a big difference. And as I started to think about that, my engineering mind took over, my pattern maker's brain took over. And I just thought, well, actually, we've confronted many problems in our time. And most of the problems that we encounter, we look at from a pragmatic point of view. We obviously think about what the problems are and we plot a path through them. So I thought, right, okay, so as I sit here, I've probably got a carbon footprint of 15 tons personally, and as it turned out, something like 450 tons professionally. And so I thought, okay, well, let's begin the journey. So over the course of a weekend, I decided to change my world forever. And personally, that was very easy. I went from being a red-blooded meat eater to a vegetarian and on to being a vegan in the space of a couple of weeks, because I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I changed my electricity supplier to a green provider. That took me about 24 hours. I ordered some secondary double glazing. I decided to replace my boiler. I put a new cylinder in. I started to power my house purely from electricity. I found 100% biogas, and yeah, it was more expensive, but so what? I was in a good position. I could make these changes. Well, this all happened in the space of a few weeks, and I was really energized to transfer those thoughts to my business. And so we began what we call the Midas Green Initiative. And that really was a journey to document our pathway from being a carbon-intensive polyurethane moulder into a responsible engineering manufacturing business that not only negated our carbon footprint as quickly as we could, but actually shared every piece of IP that we created with anybody that would listen or would read it. Because ultimately, this was about recalibration. As I said, I'd had a good life. I was in a good position. So why would I not want to put all my energy and all my success into changing my world, but also trying to influence other people in changing theirs? You see, what I didn't tell you is, along with being a foundry pattern maker and a chartered scientist and a reasonably successful business guy, I'm a proper tree hugger. I'm a naturalist. I've loved animals and birds all my life. I'm an activist. I stand in front of things that shouldn't be stood in front of because I really believe that we need to make a difference. Ultimately, I'm motivated to act now more than most people. So the opportunity to change my business gave me a fantastic platform to show that it's up to people in positions like mine to lead the way. We can't wait for those in power to tell us what to do and then follow their lead. It's obvious what we've got to do. We've got to negate our carbon footprint. So let's just get on with it. And I think for me, Summit, it's really about saying to people, look, we can all do something, and some people can do a lot more than others. Yeah. But it's duty bound on all of us to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can. And I think my story with the Midas Green Initiative is really one of, when you set your mind to something and you believe in what you're doing, well, you can move mountains. And I think that's really what we've proven.
Right, you're a tree hugger. You decide, I'm going to ditch the Lamborghini for a Sinclair C5, if anyone can remember those things. That's all very well. And your kids, you've told me, they were like, go for it, Dad, let's do this. How the hell do you go to your team in a plastics manufacturing business and go, guys, we're going to change our business to a net zero business? How did the team react? They think the boss is going bonkers, especially when you talk a little bit now about what money you had to outlay to change your manufacturing processes, because your finance director must have had an absolute heart attack.
Well, one of the great things about running an SME, I mean, we're about 80 people strong, is obviously you can make a lot of noise really quickly and get some attention. And when you can put across a rational explanation, well, you're highly unlikely to come across too much resistance. So, yeah, of course, I wanted to do this for all the right reasons. But in any business, you're going to have your doubters and you're going to have your supporters. And you're going to have a whole raft of people in the middle that really don't mind either way as long as they remain safe and secure. So when you start talking about the fact that, actually, guys, this is the right thing to do, but frankly, if we don't do it, we aren't going to exist in 5 years, 10 years' time, well, that really galvanizes thoughts. But then when you move on to the cost, and you look at where you invest to save energy, where you invest to actually generate energy, when you look at the links between environmentalism and the circular economy and carbon reduction, well, all of these things look quite daunting. But I put to my team that, look, we're arguably the global market leader in the process that we've invented. You know, frankly, it's time to redress the balance. What we must do is use some of this profit that we've made, use some of this position that we've carved out to actually recalibrate. And when we come out the other side, regardless of cost, not only will we be Scope 1 and 2 process carbon neutral, audited by the Carbon Trust, not only will we become carbon net zero through the relationships that we forged with our community forest, but we'll actually then be in a position to arguably be a far stronger entity to rebuild those profits and go forward and make more success. So, quite honestly, most people that are in a team such as ours, they're really happy to do an amazingly sterling job in the background, and they're really happy to push me forward and get me to do the talking when it comes down to it, because they believe in what we do as a team. And so when it came to the point where we sold the Midas Green Initiative to the workforce, it's a case of, well, look, it sounds like we've got to do this. There's plenty of people here that actually want to toe the line and set the example and bring their ideas and thoughts in. And as a result, it's not daunting, it's not difficult, it's actually team building, and it creates more momentum. So before you know it, you've had a couple of monthly meetings and all the decisions are being made for you. The progress is being made really quite easily. And then it just comes down to supporting that momentum and keeping that progress going. So actually, it's one of the easiest things that we've done is to get the team on side and progress this forward quickly.
Tell the audience about the sort of things you did. Because if you explain a bit of what you used, how your manufacturing was, the changes you made with the cardboard, things like that. Can you just explain to the audience what decisions you took and what it started to do to your business?
Okay, well, obviously the easy things things like changing your energy providers on power and gas, obviously. But then you start to look at investments in the business, and we all know one of the biggest things you need to do, we've heard it a lot today, is just reduce the amount of energy you use. So one of the really simple things that we did was did a full audit of our compressed air situation. We've got 2 factories that they use a lot of compressed air in our processes. So we didn't actually think there'd be a huge problem there. Our compressors were only 10 years old. They were, state of the art at the time we put them in. But when we audited them, we found out that new technology was so much more efficient. And not only that there were aspects of our process. For instance, we run a raft of CNC machines that use air to blow swarf away. So what we did, we put new controls on the CNC machines that cut the air off when the program's finished. We put new compressors in the compressor bay that were literally bang up to date, state of the art. And then we saw a 60% saving in the amount of energy we used to create compressed air. Well, 60% of your energy bill to make all the compressed air you need in your factory is substantial. Well, what that actually meant was we spent 25 grand in the space of a couple of months. We'll have payback within 18 months, and then we'll be into making 25 grand every 18 months after that. Why wouldn't you do that? That's just no-brainer. Other things where you've got the link between saving money, being greener, and being able to demonstrate to your customer base your environmental credentials. Well, one of the classic things right now, we manufacture something like 25,000 mouldings a year. We ship those all around the world, all across the UK. Well, they all go out in cardboard boxes, and they all went out wrapped in plastic foam and bubble wrap with vinyl tape, and off they went, and we were really proud of that. Well, we all know that Amazon are using up all the cardboard in the world. We all know our packaging costs have gone through the roof. We're looking at 20-25% increases in costs. So I thought, well, actually, lots of the workforce are buying those packages from Amazon. We have lots of product arrives on site in cardboard boxes that we then send off for recycling. So we, last of the big spenders, we spent 6.5 grand on an industrial cardboard shredder, started shredding all the cardboard that came into the business. We started shredding all the cardboard that the company next door used, and we started getting the guys to bring in all their cardboard from home. Well, we haven't bought any bubble wrap. We haven't bought any plastic foam for the last 18 months. We used to use 40 large rolls of bubble wrap every month, something like 1,200 quid a month. Now we don't use any. All of our packaging is essentially free, apart from the boxes that we buy to suit the product that we're selling. Well, I'm driven by the green principles. I'm driven by climate change. But actually, if all I cared about was the return, why wouldn't I do that? You would just do it naturally. I can go on and on. We've put solar panels across both of our factories. Yes, big expense, lots of cash laid out. Absolutely, we saw earlier, you're looking at payback in 6 to 8 years. My model is 7, so it's spot on. But the fact is, as I sit here, our factories are running FOC. In these months, we produce all the power we use. Over the course of a year, we'll produce 32% of the power we use. Well, again, why wouldn't you do that? I've made profit since the day I switched the panels on. It cost me nothing. My HP payment is less than the saving I make on my bill. Once again, I'm no solar power expert, but I know that makes a lot of sense, and it's also a great impression to give to my customer base. One thing I will also say, when you go into this with the pure principle of doing the right thing, this principle that the time is now, we only have potentially another 8 or 9 years to reverse, or not to reverse, but to halt these problems if we're going to keep global warming below 2 degrees. Well, it's all about acting now. It's all about doing what you can. So we have a skip. We put all of our commercial waste into that skip. It goes from Bedford to Luton, which is about 20 miles, and then it's fully recycled. We have a no landfill policy. But that was happening once a week. So that meant the lorry was coming from Luton to Bedford, emptying the skip, going back to Luton, tipping out the contents. It was all getting sorted, and away we went. I got a completely clear conscience. You could argue that was, 500 kilos a week. But then I thought, well, if we buy a compactor, we can compact the material that goes in the skip, means we can get 4 times as much in the skip. And that's not going to save me any money, because I'm just going to be paying to get rid of the amount of waste that I'm producing, just as I always was. But do you know what I'm doing? I'm saving 3 lorry journeys every month, 3 carbon footprints of that lorry every month, that just by spending a few pounds has meant that I can transform the carbon footprint of the waste that we produce. Now, bear in mind, we segregate everything. We have 0 single-use plastics on site. Obviously, all of our recycling is done where it can be. We send coffee cups one direction, tin cans another, commercial waste another altogether. But by making those responsible decisions, yeah, that hasn't made me any money. But how much PR has that gained me? How much support has that given me in terms of winning new business? A huge amount. I can't even put a value on that. So it seems to me that when your intention is genuine and all you want to do is get to initially carbon neutrality and then on to net zero, it seems like every investment you make is done for the right reason, but the incidental is you end up making more money. And it seems to me that the more of this that you do, whether it's in direct savings month on month, that obviously show through to the bottom line, or whether they're intangible benefits in terms of your marketing and PR budget, it's a win-win. The thing I come back to all the time is, why wouldn't you do that? Why do we have to wait to be told what to do when it's so obvious that if you do these things, you're going to benefit now? I sit in front of you all today with a carbon net zero business. Well, I'm super proud of that, but I'm also not daft. I realise that's put me in a good position as I look through the next 5 or 10 years. And as a plastic moulder, is it not incumbent on me to make sure I prove that my use of earth chemistry is justifiable? Yeah, I make medical device enclosures. I don't put plastic product onto anything that isn't going to enhance life. But there's a whole raft of negativity out there, and it's incumbent on me to prove that what I'm doing is honourable and justifiable. And I can't moan or groan if people have a negative view of what I do for a living, if I can't be bothered to explain why I do it, how I do it, and not only that, how I've made my business an exemplar in today's marketplace.
Before we end, a couple of things that obviously loads of people think about offsetting, right? And that's the easiest way to get to carbon neutral. I've done a lot of that, and then I'm going to offset, and people talk about offset schemes or whatever. You did something very interesting, which is my criticism of offsetting has always been it's very difficult to say what is happening. Are you actually building something in Papua New Guinea, or is it just going into someone's pocket? You took a very different local attitude to this, didn't you? And that's led to something quite interesting happening in a wood up the road from you.
Well, it's phenomenal, really. If we talk about the first phase, carbon neutrality, we obviously did our work between April 2019 and June 2020 when we essentially became carbon neutral. We were certificated by the Carbon Trust at the end of 2020, but we were carbon neutral by June. Now, when we got to that point, because we'd had issues, we took our delivery vehicles off the road, just stopped using them, started using multi-drop couriers because that obviously helped to reduce our carbon footprint. But we had a residue of about 10 tonnes. So on our 80-person, £5 million business, we were looking at about 10 tonnes of carbon, in reality, over 2020, that we needed to offset. That made me pick the phone up to my local community forest, the Forest of Marston Vale, and I was basically said to these people, I said, look, I know I can buy gold standard offsets off the web and it'll cost me 50p and, life will be good. But I don't want to do that. I have a really big problem about the Amazon rainforest, about the attitude towards cutting down trees. I can't subscribe to any of these schemes with a tree hugger auditable conscience. So I said, I want some WCUs. You guys need to help me. And they basically said to me, well, we've got 55,000 PIUs. We've got about 10,000 WCUs, and we're not selling them. And I'm saying to these guys, well, you're not selling them because you don't really know what the value is, and you need that to be fixed before you start to negotiate. But I'm in real need here. This is my journey. This is how far we've come, and I need your support. So I persuaded them to sell me 10 woodland carbon units in order to become carbon neutral in 2020. I was pretty proud of that, but that got me thinking. And when we talk about scope 3, and when we look at the fact that we're selling obviously 25,000 polyurethane mouldings into the medical device sector every year, well, do you know what? As much as it might not be my problem, the carbon in that product, it's the problem of my customer. Did I think that all of my customers were going to wake up on a similar day to me and decide to offset or negate all of the carbon in the product they bought from us? Did I? Hell, of course they wouldn't. I think it would be highly unlikely if 10% are doing that in 2 or 3 years' time. So I thought, well, we're sitting here with an absolutely clear conscience, doing the very best we can. We're a successful company. We're world leading. So why don't we just take responsibility for that? So I was back on the phone, back to the Marston Vale. Right, those PIUs you're talking about, I know I can't use them as offsets, but do you know what? If I'm going to have a customer sit in front of me and say, right, you're telling me that the products I'm buying off of you are carbon neutral because you've offset the carbon content, well, I'd much rather be talking about the PIUs that I'm buying from a forest which is 3 miles from my office than I would be persuading them, well, I've got these gold certificates and there's a hydro scheme here somewhere in the world and there's a pay the farmer to not cut down the trees somewhere else in the world. Well, do you know what? If you're going to criticise me and you're going to doubt my credentials and my drive, then do you know what? I'll take that argument on. So at that point, I decided that we would go forward with the forest to offset our Scope 3. So what we did, we signed a 5-year contract. We now buy 500 PIUs every year. We plant an additional 500 trees every year, and we basically spin this up to every piece of spare cash that we can goes back into the forest to plant even more trees. And so that's brought us a great relationship with a really key part of our local community where we can prove that, yeah, we're a good local employer. We create good quality, well-paid employment. But we go beyond that. We do things properly and we do things because we care. And we actually do the thing that I keep banging on about, which is we act now. We don't wait. We do it now. And when you scrutinise the business, we're open to audit from any company, whether they're existing customers or new. We share everything we do through the Midas Green Initiative. We have web pages and social media banging information out all the time. I've had suppliers and competitors come to my factory so I can show them what we do, because this isn't about retaining IP and keeping our cards close to our chest. This is about proving that we can do what needs to be done if we're going to stop this crisis getting worse than it is.
Let's talk finally money. You do all this, and all of that is very commendable. In fact, it's more than commendable. It's bloody amazing, if I'll be honest with you. Have you made more money? Have you grown your business? What do your customers think? What do your competitors think? What do your employees think?
I can only guess what our competitors think. I like to think about what our competitors think. Yeah, we have grown our business. As I sit here, our order book's bigger than it's ever been in 32 years. We've traded through the pandemic. We didn't close for a day. Several people, myself included, contracted the virus, and some of us suffered worse than others. But we didn't close. We absolutely readdressed our order book. What we did is we prioritised all medical companies, and frontline products that were saving lives at the beginning of the pandemic got the majority of capacity. We've pushed through on that basis. As I say, we sit here with the biggest order book we've ever had. Our monthly output is higher than it's ever been. I don't know how much of that is down to the Midas Green Initiative, but what I do know is when I analyse footfall on our website, it's 50% customers looking at our product, 50% customers or people looking at what we're doing in order to achieve the carbon neutrality situation we're in. So yeah, it has to be said. It has to be intrinsic in our current success. When we look at staff turnover, it's almost negligible. You know, people want to work for us. They want to be part of the business. Our customers keep coming back. New customers keep coming on board. You know, it's not just about being a good employer and being a safe and secure environment to work within. It's about having credentials, and it's about having scruples, and it's about doing the right thing. And, you know, I'm not the only person in the company that's got kids. You know, there's plenty of our employees got kids and grandkids. They know it's up to us to do what's necessary, and I think we set a fine example, and they're proud to work for us as a result.
Are you a weirdo?
Funnily enough, I said to somebody not so long ago, I'm not a weirdo, you know, and then I realised probably shouldn't have said that.
But you know what I mean? It's like, you know, if you're watching this online, if you're here in the audience, I found it an emotionally engaging story. But it sounds so incredible. It sounds like you're, you know, like a kind of a Zuckerberg of net zero, some sort of like that. But you're not, are you?
I'm a pattern maker. I look at a drawing. I have to decide how to make the tooling that produces the mould, that produces the casting. You go from A to B to C to D. In my head, it's a straight line. We were carbon intensive. We wanted to be carbon neutral. You decide what you've got to do and you begin the journey. You take the easy wins. That gives you great feel-good factor. And then you work on the really hard problems.
So you didn't wait for government incentive. You didn't wait for schemes. Just did it.
We got on with it.
Ladies and gents, there's a man. Thank you very much, Alan Rance. Well done, mate.